Hi, I'm Adam Pike, and I'm here with CBC Chief Meteorologist Ryan Snoddon. Ryan, thank you for joining me tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Perfect. Now, I've got a couple of questions about extreme weather conditions, and I'm going to start it off with a simple one. What is extreme weather?
Extreme weather would be anything that is, extreme. I guess that scale could be different depending on where you live. Extreme weather in a city like Toronto, where there are millions of people living, might be different than extreme weather here in St. John's, which might be different than extreme weather in, say, Labrador City, where everybody's accustomed to different types of weather. And so a big storm here in St. John's might not be a big storm in Labrador City, but might be an epic shut down the city storm in Toronto. But I think generally speaking, extreme weather would be anything that is severe weather, that is, torrential rain, very, very strong winds, lots of snow, or just, a ton of, or perhaps a long duration event, a rain that isn't necessarily hard, but lasts for 3, 4, 5, 6 days and it doesn't stop raining. That then would become an extreme weather event as well.
Okay, and so for a meteorologist such as yourself, what is something that when you're looking at these systems in their infancy, what's a sign that sets the alarm bells off for you and says, okay, this might be an extreme weather system?
Environment Canada has warning criteria that's pretty good in terms of what they look at. So I would look for if there, for example, a thunderstorm outbreak, if there was going to be a lot of lightning with that, potential for hail, things that would really impact somebody's day. That's what I would look for in the summertime, or perhaps a long, heat event, days on end of humidity, or really, really day after day after day of 30 plus temperatures, which doesn't usually happen here in Newfoundland, but could. And on the other end, for rain, I think Environment Canada's criteria is 50 millimeters of rain in 24 hours. And I think that's a pretty good gauge. Any more than that, you're going to start to see some, localized flooding, or you could even have, 20 millimeters in a couple of hours that could cause localized flooding. So when I'm looking at these types of events, I look for more, not necessarily at the weather itself, but what impacts the weather will cause on, the general day-to-day goings-on of people who are impacted.
Okay, right. And so you've had a few years now experience as a meteorologist here in this province. So I'd like to ask, what extreme weather systems do you think are most common here in Newfoundland and Labrador?
Wind events, wind and rain events. We obviously get some massive snowstorms here. But the window for that generally is, we can get some big storms in even late November, early December, but typically it gets followed up by a rain event and it gets washed away. So really the window for those big, epic snowstorms is January, February, and especially March, maybe early April, like last winter. But the rain event and potential for flooding with rain is really a 365-day possibility. We can get some very, very big rainstorms even in the wintertime, depending on the track of the storm, which leads to potential for freezing after that. So there's all kinds of issues there. But it's definitely in the spring and the fall, we can get some very, very heavy rain and wind events. And those, I think, are the most common here and the ones that I think people are most accustomed to, but also you have to watch out for because they do bring the potential for flooding. And, of course, hurricane season. It doesn't even necessarily have to be a hurricane to be a big event. We saw the proof in that last spring. But rain and wind events, to answer your question. A long story short.
Okay, perfect. And now, as you just said, it's hurricane season. We've just seen Harvey, the devastation that brought to Texas, Irma as well. Now Jose's on its way. What do you think the chances are that here in Newfoundland, we're going to get a hurricane perhaps this year?
There's always the chance. It's certainly an active pattern increases those chances. It's kind of tough to say percentage-wise, but certainly the threat is there this year. We've dodged a couple of bullets already. There's another potential bullet depending on when this airs with Jose. That's certainly going to be in the mix for next week. But generally speaking, this year, whenever there's a season that's higher than that's more active than not, which is this season, the chances increase for us because this tends to be the exit region for most of those storms that swing in towards the U.S. coastline. So whether it's the remnants of a storm or the storm itself, this year the chances are higher than a regular season.
Okay, and just staying with hurricanes for one last question. It's been about 7 years since Hurricane Igor devastated the island. What do you think the chances are that we get another Igor-like event in the near future?
That's a good question. Igor was a 1 in 100 year event, and so statistically, we shouldn't get another Igor for 100 years. But Mother Nature doesn't work that way, and Igor was catastrophic damage for some areas of the island because of the setup, and we could certainly see that setup next fall or the fall after, or not for another 50 or 60 years. It really, that's unfortunately the nature of the beast that is Mother Nature, where the threat is always there, and so that's why we need to have emergency plans in place, and we need to make sure that everybody knows what the game plan is if something like that were to happen again. But it's impossible to say when another Igor might come up the coast and hit us again.
All right, well, thank you very much, Ryan, for joining me here tonight.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
No problem. Now back to you, Beth.